the KwaZulu-Natal Cooperative Governance Department says one person is still missing following a tornado that wrecked parts of the province yesterday.
Spokesperson Nonala Ndlovu says those affected are being housed in temporary shelters. Strong winds caused infrastructure damage in Inanda and Dube, while several homes have been destroyed, leaving scores of people stranded. At least 3 people have been injured.
The disaster management teams did work through the night. The rough estimates that we're getting at the moment is that about 50 houses were destroyed last night. Obviously, we know now that we did have a tornado. We have had a report of one person missing at this stage. There's no confirmation of whether that person has died or not. We are going onto the ground with the political leadership as we speak, just to see how extensive the damage. Preliminary reports indicate that it's the roofs that were blown away, but the integrity of the structures was not necessarily compromised. So what's going to be needed is to get those people material to replace their roofs so that they can move back to their homes as soon as possible.
Let's stay with the story, and we're on the ground with our reporter Karinda Jagmohan, who joins us now live from one of the hardest hit communities in Inanda. And Karinda, we're not out the woods just yet, but residents there already starting to pick up the pieces.
Certainly not out of the woods, Ayanda. Take a look at the one structure behind me. My colleague Spongise Nkobande is showing you. Everything inside has been destroyed completely. The gentleman who owns the structure trades out of the structure as well. And like you heard the official speaking in the bite just before us, the roof has collapsed in. The integrity of the structure is still fine. It's not as compromised, but the roof is collapsed in. And there's a similar situation across this area with the tin roofs, essentially, that could not withstand the might of the storm that came yesterday, that tornado, happening in a matter of minutes. 10 minutes, the residents say, happening before their eyes. Corrugated iron, like you see this one here, flying in the air like sheets of paper, one resident described it. Around us you see the damage still. The ground is still extremely wet as well. And what is also a cause for concern right now is the electrical cables that you're seeing that is also falling on the ground too. And of course there's a power outage, but should power return, this will be a hazard for the residents that are walking around, some of them bare feet, some in sandals, because their shoes have been soaked in. So they're rebuilding. Now, while structures that are made out of bricks are still standing somewhat, the informal structures that you see have collapsed completely, and so those residents say building materials are needed. Perhaps come with me on this side, and you see the ground is completely soaked as well. Around us you'll see this family here are cleaning up their house right now. They're sweeping the water out, the mud out. They're having to do washing today as well, and to dry their furniture out too. You can see all of their sofas they've taken out. The cushions are wet too, and they are one among many families that are having to dry off. And you can see this gentleman, he's climbing on the roof because they're among those houses where the roof has caved in completely. And you can see there, although there were bricks set atop the iron, the corrugated iron, some of that iron structure collapsed because of the heavy rain, and so they have to rebuild. In fact, we hear that the government delegation that will visit this area is going to be here at about 8:30, so they're grouping at a meeting point nearby, and they're going to visit these sites to see what is needed from the residents. And I also want to speak to you about the general integrity of the structures here. Take a look at this container, for example. That container is standing, but had the storm been more severe or that tornado come towards this particular part, it would have collapsed over. And there are many structures like this across this community, across communities like this in Durban specifically. And one of the concerns that have been raised when there are natural disasters like this one is whether or not there's proper housing or suitable structures in order to ensure the safety of people that are working or living inside those structures. And so, of course, when the Human Settlement Minister arrives here today, she was going to be doing a handover of houses in Isipingo, south of Durban, but her first stop is here because of this tornado. One of the questions to be conveyed or asked to her is about the progress in housing for the many people you see around us that are perhaps not living in suitable housing, especially because we're seeing natural disasters more frequently and the cleanup like this more having to happen or having to occur more frequently. This family, of course, their Tuesday afternoon, or the Wednesday afternoon rather, is now going to be taken over by this recovery and cleanup. So in the next hour I'm going to speak to more guests, as well as we're going to cover that government delegation visit here today, Ayanda.
Absolutely, and we look forward to it. Several communities in KwaZulu-Natal can't seem to catch a break. Karinda Jagmohan is in Inanda for us.